Watching, as you watch your bodies get sick and die and age and things, you're watching the lower bodies actually sap their energy and twist the template, the natural template that was supposed to be there. Because the natural template for humans, for all things actually, is divine health. It is that balance between the negative and the positive, that center point of engaged detachment that creates eternally divine health. That's where the balance is, and that's the path of joy, being able to follow that balance. Now, we simply sit in our hologram, and it's like going to a horror movie. It has shock value, where you just watch it go, have no idea how it's going or why it's going. And most people are just trying to deal like one day at a time or maybe 1 week at a time. Oh, I'll get through this week and see what next week pops up. It's like very often we don't say to ourselves, in fact, most often we don't, okay, this week has been an interesting experience that I created. I'm going to create a better experience next week. Now, some of us that are starting to get the fact that we're the creators and the manifestors of our experience, saying, I intend to create a better week. I will. I say it now. Do you know your subconscious? Do you know your body consciousness? Because if you don't, you still don't have that power, because it's accreted so much frequency that the will and intention and the twisted energy patterns that are stored in the lower bodies are still going to project your hologram out for you. Now, your mental body will too. So if you keep your thoughts in a balanced way and don't let yourself get too attached to negative or to positive and keep a nice balance, you will eventually allow that stuff to come up from your subconscious. You'll see it in your hologram, but you won't react to it where you give it the power. You'll take it back and say, you need healing. And you've just taken a part of yourself that's been out of control and assembled it back into yourself. So we're clearing our subconscious minds as we walk through the hologram and see the stuff that they throw up at us. They're showing us a part of ourselves that's out of harmony with its natural divine blueprint, that's kind of lost in chaos and doesn't know what to do. So that chaos comes back to us, and we're supposed to be able to realize that. Where we can say, okay, this chaos that just came into my life has a lot to do with me. It's showing me a part of myself from the past. Now, it's all happening now, but the past is the lower frequency part of yourself that's asking for your healing. Every negative experience or negative, unpleasant type experience that comes to you, it has a message for you about what needs to be healed in your template. You drew it to yourself, literally. You manifested it, literally. And that's hard to own it. They say you have to own it before you can make it go away. You really do. If you have experiences in your life that you don't like, you have to be able to realize, if you're going to be a conscious creator, you have to realize that my template has done this. All right? It's not anybody else's fault, even though it might seem like it is. Yeah, but you did this, but you did that. You're talking to your symbols. The people here are symbols in your hologram. You're a symbol in their hologram. Bring your power back and say, my hologram did this part of it, and I see it. Don't worry about their hologram. The one you need to clear is your own. You will literally draw versions of people to you that correspond with the frequencies you're sending out from the emotional body and the physical body. There's some really, it's kind of sad to watch people who have certain distortion patterns in strand 1 that affect the base chakra and affect their D1 projections. Excuse me. They tend to have all sorts of, and women have more of this. There's a repression factor that's been going on for thousands of years because they were trying to control the breeding of the gene lines here. So there's a lot of woman repression. Woman repression was not just a mental thing. It was a societal thing that directly affected how energy could process through the body. Women were not allowed to express. So because women had been repressed for so long, the template projects out things that resemble victimization, where if a woman doesn't know how to clear her base chakra, and a lot of us already learned that one in several other time frames, but some people have still watched this pattern happen. They will draw to themselves people constantly that are only interested in them sexually. When their hearts want somebody higher that loves them for who they are, they constantly draw on people that the only thing they care about is what kind of gender body they're walking around in, because they're sending out signals on the lower template that they don't realize are there. Their fields are saying, come and get me. They're broadcasting D1 frequency that's hitting the base chakra templates of the males, and they're saying, no problem. You know? And it's frustrating for women who go through that because, I don't want this. I'm so sad. I'm not even going to talk to men anymore because all they want is sex. All they want to do is chase me around because I happen to be in a female body. Can anybody like me for who I am? I'm more than my body. When you start to heal the lower chakras and the templates that go with them, you start to not have those problems, where you start to actually draw to you males that, and same for males in the other way. If you get women that just want you for your money, that's the other pattern that goes with the base chakra one. There are distortions in strand one that have to do with power, getting power from the opposite gender by either sex or money. It's a power quest, and that's why so many people's relationships are tied up and twisted into power quests, where you think you're in love and the heart feels something and it gets translated through the body, then all of a sudden these really sick dramas pop up where it feels like a power struggle. You're trying to take my power, now you're trying to take my power. And these resentments build up. These are processings of distortion patterns that are held in strand one that come up into strand two, the emotional body, and process up into the higher chakras where you're in your mental body and you're communicating, and all of a sudden you're not hearing each other. You're coming from different perspectives. It's a polarity thing that actually has to do with distortions in the planetary grids that put those distortions in our strands 1 and 2 templates and partially in the third strand template, which makes it very difficult for males and females to understand each other because they're throwing different sets of frequencies. The natural set of frequency communication. Communication is this. It's 2 frequencies. You have a frequency and the one you're communicating with has a frequency. They come together. You make a bridge. The frequencies merge. You understand each other. And the more you do this, the more of a feeling of love you will share with whoever you're communicating with. What happens is, because our templates have been twisted, the frequencies that are supposed to go this way within the dimension 1, 2, and 3 bodies, the physical, emotional, and mental, go this way. And they kind of a little bit of a link enough where you can engage, but then there's all this other stuff that creates static and pushes on each other, and it builds up tension in the fields, and it replicates the pattern more and more and more. Men and women are supposed to get along with each other. In the ancient of days, before these distortions happened to our templates and to our consciousness, the only difference in having a male and female body was you needed to come into density. You needed to take on both. You couldn't fit all of you in one body, in one time vector. So you'd come in as gender twins. Now, with indigos, gender twins come into the same time vector, and they actually cycle together all the time, where they will follow the same timeline. Your twin will be on planet with you. Now, if they happen to die before you do, they'll hang out in the D4 frequencies, literally kind of like an angel hanging out waiting for you, that kind of thing. With the human imprint that has only 12 strands, they get a gender twin too. They have the other half of themselves in the opposite gender, but they don't always have the same time vector. Their time vectors will come together at a certain point in time when it's time for them to go up to the next level. So in their ascension cycles, they will meet. In time, they will meet their twins. But indigos, they're literally with you, because we come in that way. Now, it wasn't supposed to be with you to fight with you. We weren't supposed to, be fighting with each other all the time just because you're throwing one set of frequencies and I'm throwing another, and we're so polarized that we're blaming each other for it. That's what it comes out to be. No, you did this. No, you did this. No, you did this. Well, whose fault? Who started this anyway? You get in these loops of arguments or loops of emotional reactions that you don't know where the heck they're coming from. And some part of you sits back in there, and however many times you try to express your point, you can say it 5 different ways. You get to the point where you realize this person's just not going to understand me. And as soon as you realize that, you're dead. Okay? As soon as you realize that, you have put a big thought pattern out that says, we will never understand each other. All right? It feels futile after a while to deal with the conflicts that come up between people, and not just between couples, but between you and your boss, or you and your mother, or you and your father. You will have the same issues over and over, and they'll take on different clothes. Okay, we thought we solved that, but the same power struggles coming out here. Power struggles are frequency struggles, and frequency struggles are created by distortions that are in the templates that are blocking the natural flow, because the natural condition of the hologram and of consciousness is flow, which is frequency harmonizing, which is love. That's why one of the little catchphrases of the New Age movement is, everything is love. It's all love. But they don't have a definition for what that means. So you're going to think, well, you mean that base chakra stuff where everybody's chasing each other around? Is that love? We don't even remember what love is here, because we've been taught so many distorted things about love. There were periods of time when the Anunnaki races had invaded this planet. There was a large period of time where they actually took over, and they were the dominating force on surface Earth. And they set up models of civilization. It's called the Palladian-Orion model of cultural development. And it's the Antichristos model. It's built upon male dominance. It's built upon taking power from someone else. The value systems that we have in our hologram right now, or you could call them the devalue systems that we have in our hologram, where we are taught that there is a pecking order, that certain people are more important than others and therefore get more privilege, and they have the right to control your power. The money system we're living with on this planet is not in divine right order. It's a control mechanism that was the same one that was on Nibiru thousands of years ago. That was a little gift given to our cultures. Once upon a time, there was free exchange. First of all, we had free energy systems because we had the knowledge of the Templar and we knew how to run the natural energy systems of the planet. There was always enough food. There was always enough. Everybody had a place. There were no homeless people in those situations. There was no having to kill yourself so just hopefully by the time you're 30 you can afford to put a roof over your head, and maybe then you can get married because you might be able to help somebody else put a roof over theirs too. The pressure to just survive was not there because we all knew ourselves as a family and we all knew how to manifest. If we needed food to grow, we would simply talk to the seeds and communicate with their consciousness and ask them where the best place to plant them was. We'd talk to the earth and ask where the best place to be was. Where do I belong? Because I know there's a place that belongs with me, that I belong with, and it misses me as much as I miss it. We all had a piece of the template that belonged to us, that we had a right to be. Right now, we're living on a slave planet. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but that's the scary part. That's the real scary part. You think, slave planet? Huh? Did anybody notice that you can't just go and say, oh, it's pretty here. I'm going to pitch my tent here, and I'll build my little stick house here, and this is going to be mine. Good luck. Why? Because somebody else owns it already. Why? Because somebody decided there was a system where they were going to carve the earth up in little pieces, even though it's a living body, and tell people that if you had enough money and power, you could have a piece of the earth, but if not, you don't belong here. You can be homeless. You can go live in a box under a bridge. And if you bug us, then we'll put you in jail. We'll take your freedom. We'll take your power. This is a prison planet. There is something horribly, horribly wrong with the things we have been taught to look at as normal. We have been taught to look at the way the political system works as normal, with the way the economic system looks. Oh, this is just normal. It's just the way it is. See, there's two ways. Normal is where you actually believe that this is okay. So you have to make it this way. So you participate in it and feel good about it. I'm doing my part. What are you doing your part in? If you're still stuck in a place where you think people are supposed to be in conflict with each other, and where you think it's all supposed to be a power struggle, and there's a pecking order, and as long as you're a good little person to the big person who has your power, then everything will be fine for you. You'll get along good in the hologram. Then there's we start to realize, oh my God, there's something wrong with this. The big thing that helps you to realize this is when you can't make money. Let's say you're born into a family that isn't rich, they're not even comfortable. Maybe, let's say that your mom lived under a bridge in a box. Now, you probably, at that point, didn't get to know your mom because somebody would have come and taken you away for your own good and put you in an institution of some sort to raise you safely because you were under a bridge in a box. Now, you start out with a situation of apparent lack, seeming that you are lacking. You grow up with a sense of need, of really, really needing to fix it, because all the things that you would have liked to have felt as a little baby, the comfort, the safety, the being okay and being loved, weren't there, particularly once you started in the school experience, especially if somebody stuck you in a school with kids who had nice clothes and all you had were rags, or kids who had nice houses and you had to go home to a trailer. All of a sudden, you found that you weren't lovable, and it hurts. You weren't lovable because the people around you were taught to judge you on what you had rather than what you were. And indigos especially are extremely sensitive to this kind of thing. They feel that judgment even if the mental body can't see it. They feel it. They know, you're not loving me. You're not, and indigos tend to come in with their hearts open. Yeah, we're all here and, we know each other and you don't remember me, do you? Oh, and it gets to be a very, very painful experience. We get to know lack, and then we get a drive to fix it. That's where we become, that's where we become involved with career pursuit. I will develop myself. I will master this. I'll show at least myself that I'm worth something, because you end up feeling like you are worthless. There's no such thing as worthless in God's universe. Whose universe are we in? Because here, People walk around feeling like they're worthless because they don't have this, they're not enough this, they're not enough this. Worthless is a condition of being conned into not recognizing yourself as a face of source. Our belief systems here, there's a very intimate, actually they've been sleeping together for many years, the religious doctrine establishments and the political establishments and the economic establishments. It's been like a flaming threesome for thousands of years here, and it's not been based on morality at all. They're co-conspiring with each other, and the sad part is, who's manifesting this hologram? Humans. Why? Because they're using distorted thought patterns to amplify the distortions that are already in their templates to the point where they're turning themselves into something that's not even human. Humans have heart, they have emotional bodies, and they have compassion. That is the human imprint. We're losing those qualities because we have been literally raising ourselves on a hologram that was given to us by another race who has some real problems. And we have progressively allowed that to become the dominant force on our planet. We are living in a prison planet where we are the little manufacturing machines for the Anunnaki model. And the Dracs had to get in there too. So there's actually the Draconian version. Some of the stuff that we're dealing with is Draconian, and some of it is Anunnaki. Where do the humans fit in here? Don't we even live here anymore? Or are we just the little like bio machines that manufacture the hologram for them? That's what it's come out to be. It's like, I didn't watch the whole Matrix movie, but for a while the Matrix movie was very popular. I saw parts of it, and at one point, I don't even remember the point, it got to me so bad where I had to leave. Because it showed a concept so clearly. This is what's been going on here. We're in the Matrix. And when you first start to get out of the Matrix and see it, you go, oh, it couldn't be that bad, could it? It is, but that's a relative term. If you don't surrender your power to it, it's not bad. It's something that needs healing. And you can be a healing influence. You start to be a healing influence when you start to learn what your power is. If we know our power is thought, that's another little trick to the New Age teachings. Oh, thoughts are things. Your power is thought. Just do this. All right. My power is thought. My thoughts are power. My thoughts are, where are my thoughts? What do my thoughts do? How do I use this power? Okay? Nobody's telling you what your thoughts are made of, what they become, what they do. First, we need to understand what they are and how they manufacture the hologram. Then there's a whole long series of healings that need to take place where we start to realize, what does this set of words project out here? Okay? We have been using language, we've been taught to use language in a way that it creates the negative, it creates the lower frequency pattern in the projection, and it creates polarity, so the lower and the higher can't come together. What we use as our belief system affects our emotional bodies totally. The emotional body is the lower strand. The higher strand communicates down the pattern to the lower strand, and it affects what the lower strand does. So it means mental body sends its message down to the emotional body, and the emotional body will transmit that feeling and that sensation, that pattern. If you're using your minds in a way, let's say you can wake up and say, oh, here I am again, have to go to work. Yeah, great day we're having. I really don't like my hologram. You'll project more of the same. You need to acknowledge the feeling that, okay, I feel a disresonance here. I'm the creator. I have the power. I will change this now. And sometimes things will change and I didn't even do anything on this level. He's going, oh, I'm getting good. I missed myself fixing it, but I did. There's a whole thing that I would love to be able to say when we leave here that you'll be able to exactly know how to project your thoughts to get exactly what you want. I can tell you what your thoughts are and what they do, and I can give you some suggestions as to how we begin the process of learning to think in ways that create the manifestations we want. But it's not a process that happens overnight. It's a process of first learning to catch your thoughts, realizing what am I allowing to be my template right now, and realizing you have the ability to change it. Now, thoughts are interesting because they're multi-level. The part that moves through you here as the kind of random ones that come through and then they go someplace, they come up from someplace else. Thoughts are part of idea organizations that are larger groups of thoughts, that are part of belief organizations that are literally in the subconscious and in the body pattern. We were seeded in ancient times with distorted belief patterns ever since Atlantis, 9558 BC, was when the big drama of the flood was staged, when the great cleaning came down so we wouldn't have our history. We were fed hand-fed various versions of creation myths since that time that were intended to create certain things in the hologram and in our emotional bodies. These imprints get passed down to our children, generation after generation. We've carried the same distortions with us. We were taught disempowering concepts of gods were external things. We were taught that the environment was a harsh place, therefore you needed protection against it. Now, they didn't teach us to harmonize with it, to love it. They taught us to fear it. We have been working on fear for thousands of years. Excuse me. There is a healing process that goes. The first part of that healing begins in recognizing, oh my God, I'm the manifester. Really? I really, really am. I've been thinking God was doing it all this time. Because most people are taught God did it, right? They're taught, and God's somebody other than you, right? God's out there someplace sitting on a throne with a big white beard maybe. But God made this world. God created the heavens and earth. And you have to be nice to God, or the wrath of God will come down on you. What they forgot to tell you in the whole statement was that you are the God that's doing this in your hologram. Because you are at one with Source, you are a piece of Source manifest. You are God that's been tricked into thinking you're not, and that the God that holds your power is out there someplace else. There is a God that we are all faces of, that exists as a massive consciousness and intelligence that's far beyond what any of us could fit in a body here. It doesn't mean that you can express all of your godness in one form. If you could, there'd only be one person. God wanted to express, so God expressed as the universe. So there's a part of you that is God, that is the planet itself, that is the galaxy itself. So it's not where, oh, I'm God, so I can be really arrogant and like push people around and tell them what to do because I manifest things. That's not what it means to say I am God. But it's to acknowledge that there's this part of you that always has that level of power. And when you start to realize that, you start to realize, what have you been taught to do when you wanted to be spiritual for the last number of thousands of years? Pray to God out there. But if God's in you, what are you doing? You're giving your power to your hologram to some fictitious character out there that you don't know who it is, but you feel totally separate from it. So you feel very, very small, very powerless. Like you have to really behave. And of course, along with that paradigm of belief that we were fed, we have to behave in exactly certain ways. And if we behave any different than that, we go to hell. That's one of those other hypothetical places. I think we are in it. If you believe you are powerless and you're walking around in a space that there's some external God that did this to you, and you don't even know what this God expects of you, so you don't even know how to be good because there's so many versions of what God expects, that is hell. You're living a walk in hell that you're manufacturing and you don't even know it. And you have the power to change it, but because you've been tricked into believing that you're not the manifester, you feel utterly powerless, that your world is coming at you. And what it usually does is creates a power of subservience, where if you can just figure out how to survive comfortably enough and compensate for the fact that you're terrified here because you don't understand what's going on, because a part of you knows that you're the manifester, and the other part is tied up in the fear patterns that think everything else is outside of your self-control and your power. We have a lot of healing that needs to be done, and it's a personal thing, because we all come through with different beliefs and different effects, like different paradigms that have affected us, belief paradigms that have affected us. Our beliefs are... Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you something that we've been seeing a lot, and I'd love to hear your response on it.
Okay.
There is mechanisms that get activated when the DNA reaches a certain point that kick up then a belief structure that's hooked in by a fear place in our own emotional bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I can just speak to Joseph and I. When we got deeper and deeper in love, she's working on the same piece right now. When we got deeper and deeper in love, there was a certain frequency we moved into that kicked up, I can't trust love.
Mm-hmm.
And then but it was kicked by a machine. And that was really bizarre. And when we finally, the Yanni came and showed us how to remove and neutralize the mechanism, then the whole hologram shifted and we started to trust each other because the projection shifted. But it was a mental, emotional piece that was hooked into the DNA.
It's an implant. What she was referring to, she was saying that they've noticed, they work with healing energies a lot, and they've noticed that there was a time where they hit a certain frequency in some of their work, and there were these these like little mechanics in the DNA templates that they were working with that were throwing out, as soon as you would hit a certain vibration where, say, love would start to open in you, it would reverse itself and turn into fear of love. Oh, I can't. And mistrust, where as soon as you got close to the thing that would have expanded you, it shifts into the reverse, and you get pushed away from it. And it's coming from your own template. And she said that they were aware that there were little, she called them machines or mechanics that were in the DNA that were actually doing this. This is very true. They're implants that were implanted in the planet's grids. They're actually still in the planet's grids. All right? They're crystalline implants. Now, crystal technologies are advanced technologies because crystals like quartz and selenite have the ability to hold for very long periods of time patterns of energy that you project into them, scalar patterns. They're scalar holders, transmitters, and receivers. So if you want to come into a planet and start messing with the belief systems of people, you leave little belief crystals around. You project a certain pattern of energy that holds certain ideas that would translate into the hologram or into words to mean this or into pictures to mean this. If you want to hijack a species, you put these crystal plant implants into their planetary shields, because the planetary shields and the persons share energy all the time. Energy comes in from the galactic spectrum, comes into the planet, circulates through the planet, circulates through all the life forms on the planet. So we literally have the distortions of our DNA, that they're not just distortions we picked up from ourselves and our other time vectors. The distortions that are continually remanifesting in our bodies. You could get clear right now. You could be like taken to a place where none of this is happening. As soon as you're brought back in and put your feet on this earth, you've got an implant again.
It makes it about the other person. The play.
Oh yeah, it throws it out as if it's the hologram's fault, whoever the hologram is, right?
Separate from the stimulus that's creating the DNA activation, and that's the thing we saw is the person that was activating you. It will make you push away from them, these implants. So the one place where you're going to get the most expansion, it makes you resistant.
What it has to do with actually is now when we talk about DNA, this is kind of like advanced stuff because we haven't talked too much about yet how the DNA factors in manufacturing the hologram and what your growth process is. Because basically you go through a series of frequencies. If every frequency band, just the way dimensions are structured, has 12 sub-frequency bands, and every one of your DNA strands corresponds directly to one of those dimensional bands, that means you would have 12 sub-frequency template, parts of your template. Then progressively, this is how you actually see time, that it gets projected out. You would say you have 12 codes in one DNA strand, and that whole strand holds the whole content of your experience that will be projected out in dimension 1. All right? When you hit the first little code with frequency, it throws the hologram out. Okay? The hologram throws energy back at you that hits the next code. It throws a hologram out. The second code throws a hologram out, and the first one comes back in. There's this process of your DNA is literally manufacturing piece by piece every moment to get you to have the experience from moving from one moment to be able to watch the clock hand move a minute. You've actually gone through numerous ones of these cycles where one code in the DNA got stimulated by frequency, which starts when you do fetal integration. This is where your growth process starts. It throws out the hologram throws energy back at you. And it gets into particles. I'm going to talk about how this works with particles. When we begin to understand this, it makes more sense. We start to say, well, where are implants? Where do they fit into this? Because they change that natural cycle of how it's supposed to work with humans. Humans have a really neat manifestation process. They come into fetal integration here in density 1, but they do it simultaneously. When you were born at the same time in all of your time vectors. Because time is simultaneous. Your creation point and your leaving point are actually all the same point, but you'll see them sequenced and stretched out as if they were separate from each other. Now, when you come into fetal integration, all the fetal integration points where all your other cells and other time vectors came in, including the ones in density 2 and density 3 and density 4, they all come into manifestation. That sets in motion the holographic program. Soon as your energy, which is like a consciousness, we call it the holographic beam, comes in from the primal sound fields, turns into light, and hits the templates, the dormant scalar templates that are the dimensional field here, you start to get manufacture of your hologram. You will get your first code in your D1 strand will project its thing out and turn around. It's really a frequency. One of your Myon units, coming out, hits the unified field of Myon units, which makes it reverse its polarity. It becomes a Dion unit that is a transmitter, and it throws its information back at you. And you, as a Myon consciousness in this universe, see it as a hologram. It has to do, too, with the fact that when you flash on into manifestation, you have energy fields around you that are spherical shaped, which bend light in a certain way. You carry in with you your holographic screen in your auric field. When you flash on into consciousness, see, you're dormant. You're fully awake and aware and at one with Source between every moment. When you manifest, what happens is you, as consciousness, temporarily turn off as consciousness and turn on as hologram. And then when you move to the next moment point, you turn off there, go back into being fully at one with Source, and then project out again. But it happens so fast that at this point, we're not seeing the points where our consciousness turns the other direction. Our consciousness is doing this. It's turning toward manifestation and seeing itself and putting itself in as the hologram, then reversing its polarity, turning around, and going back into expansion as Source, and contracting back down and expanding out this way, and then turning around this way. We're all standing still. Okay? You know, when you finally get what's happening, you go, what do I do with it? You know, they were explaining this to me this morning, where they were explaining how the thoughts, the Myons and Dions, which we'll talk about more, because right now Myons, Dions, and Trions are kind of like new words, right? When we start to see what they create, you'll go, oh my goodness, wow, we're creating the subatomic particle base. Oh my God, we're creating the base of the hologram every time we breathe, basically. And come out as a consciousness. You are projecting your consciousness out into the unified field. That sets whatever's in your template starts to, you literally project it out. And the way it works is you have over here on this side, as far as like there's particle and antiparticle universes, we're in the particum universe, which is considered the particle universe. Here, we are Myon consciousness. So we are our templates. Our self is in the form of a Myon field of particles, right? Particulates, they call them. They're small ion particles. We merge with the larger Myon field of the universal structure, the dimensional structure. We come in, and our Myons intersect with the larger Myons that have more energy and more thrust than our smaller templates do. The larger thrust Myons, it's like Myons have the negative charge. You put negative and negative together. It creates a repulsion, a resistance, and because the planetary template is larger than ours, than our small individual ones, it reverses our Myon, making it a Dion, which means the negative charge. I'm not saying negative bad thought. I'm saying the negative charge of our self here, our consciousness here, as it intersects with the negative field. The negative field is bigger than our little negative self. It flips us into an electrical expression, and then throws the electricity back toward us in the template. And that's where we see it. We're seeing that electricity being thrown back. And that triggers the next part of us to manifest. And what you're doing is progressively, each strand of your DNA is going, okay, you had strand 1. There's a process of, they call it initiation, activation, and consummation. This is what DNA strands do, and this is how your hologram is manufactured. Initiation is when the frequency first starts to hit a code, let's say one little tiny Helon code in one strand of your DNA. Frequency hits that. The frequency is your holographic beam coming through from Source, your consciousness. Hits that. That code initiates. It starts to vibrate, right? It starts to be sound. Starts to vibrate. Now, activation happens when it starts to vibrate enough where it hits a critical mass. Now, it's going to vibrate, and it's going to pull more vibration that's like it toward itself, so it's going to become a louder sound pattern, right? Once it gets to a critical mass, that's when it activates. And that's when the information starts to get ready to, it's like getting ready to birth that baby. It's going to pop out into manifestation. It activates, and then it pushes itself out into activation, into your hologram. That moment point bursts into the hologram. And it has a certain set of vibrations that it's made out of. And these are the vibrations you're seeing as your hologram point. Like this is your point of focus, your hologram. Now, when that got projected out and sent electrical frequency back to you in the form of dyons. They hit the next little code and send it singing. The next, right next to it, if you have a DNA strand that has one code here, you just pop that moment point. There's one here that's not awake yet. As soon as you pop that moment point throws vibration back, hits that one, starts it to singing, it initiates. Now, we call the consummation point when you have initiation starts to vibrate, activation when it starts to hit a critical mass of vibration and starts to run itself into the hologram. Consummation is when it's fully spent in the hologram. When whatever that pattern was, from A to Z, you've got that part of your hologram has done. That's the point where the picture changes. Okay? That's the point where enough frequency was sent back to the next moment point, it's initiated, and it's getting ready to activate. As the next moment point is getting ready to project out, the other one has consummated and is drawing back in, which means it's going. What you're seeing is what we talked about, vibration and oscillation, turning on and off of the scalar units. When you activate, the scalar unit goes on and gives you the image, the holographic image. All right. When it goes back to vibration, it turns off. But when this one's turning off, the next one's turning on. So you get a continual flow of seeing a light field with its hologram in it. When really it's turning on, off, but in such a sequence that you can't tell there was a changeover. In that changeover, it's literally not just your hologram that's flashing on and off. It's you. Your whole body is being reborn between every second. You go back to source between every moment point. And think how short a moment is. I mean, science has got it down where they can find nanoseconds and those kind of things, billionths of a second and things like that. This is happening so rapidly. The vibration is in such a way that if you're taken into what time looks like here, it's so rapid we don't see the transition point. So it seems like the hologram is somebody else's world that somebody created us and put us here. We're putting ourselves in the hologram every moment, every breath we take. Our breathing rhythms show us what this is about. The inhaling and the exhaling process has to do with literally the manifest consciousness in the body consciousness itself is showing you the energy exchange. It's showing you that you come in to vibration and then express out into oscillation. This is what's happening when you breathe. Well, the energy that's really being, the first level of breathing, is the fact that you have your template turning on in the hologram. And this is where the DNA strands, they initiate, they activate, and then they consummate when the next one is activating. So there's a communication of frequency all the way up the chain. Now what this does is progressively turn on portions of your template. You came in with a template that you wanted to experience in manifestation. That's the you that you call your whole self. It contains the information that you wanted to experience in your hologram. Progressively, when you go through, let's say, strand 1, the information you had in your strand 1 template, that will progressively bring more of the unified field into you. Even though the other one flashed off, where'd it go? It came back to you. Okay? So your past, you take it with you all the time. You're manufacturing past, present, and future actually with you all the time because the same thing is coming from the top down, from your higher dimensions of self. They're doing the same thing. Now, we're in a situation where we're dragging our past imprints and the distortions from our lower strand templates, continually projecting them into the future. We've created a loop in time for ourselves where we're stuck in a level of evolution that we weren't intended to be. Now, what is evolution in terms of what is growth? What is growth in the hologram? How does it occur? It has to do with climbing the dimensional scale in your template. You come in with the template and you progressively activate it. It means you activate more. You pull in frequency from the unified field and you activate your template, you project out your hologram, but you have still in you now that frequency from the unified field that expands your pattern a little bigger. Then you do the same exchange. As you're projecting out and the energy is being sent out to your hologram, that comes back in as the next one goes out, you're accreting frequency, pulling it into your template, and it's expanding your form, and it expands your hologram. That is what the growth process is, even from a fetus up to a person who can be born into an independent body. Birth is a critical mass issue. When the fetus grows into a baby inside the mother's body and hits a critical mass where it can interact directly with the unified field around it, that's when birth happens. That's what triggers birth. And the baby grows from a fetus because it starts as soon as conception. This is before the soul is in it. The pattern itself that came part of the mother's consciousness, part of the father's consciousness, formed that baby body. It doesn't have its own soul yet, but even with just those pieces of the mother and father's consciousness put together, it starts to accrete frequency, pull in frequency, and it starts to see its D1 experience. Now that's only a one-dimensional experience. Okay, we see three-dimensional. As soon as we're born, we see 3D. That's because while we're gestating in the womb, we're first of all expanding our D1 template. We start to get the molecular cellular consciousness. Then we go into the D2 template, where we start to experience sensation as the second strand, and the qualities of the emotional body come. Thought forms become the perception of a child that's developing, like probably by about 3 months gestation you would have in the womb. You would have going into D2 activation. Birth happens when you get halfway through the third strand in this time frame. You get halfway through the third strand, the baby body has the ability to start directly interacting without the mother's field, serving as the intermediary frequency feeder. It can directly interact with pulling frequency from the unified field around it, from the timeline around it. You basically, a baby, what it does is, before you can come in as a soul, your parents have to grow a baby body for you that, first of all, gets the timeline rhythms up to a certain point where they can begin to sustain. Then you can put your consciousness in. You adopt the timeline rhythms that you got from the pattern your parents had set. That's called fetal integration. Then you and the timeline and the parts of yourself that are brand new because you just inherited them from your parents, you have to assimilate the parts of your parents' consciousness that weren't yours to begin with. Now you have a bit more of yourself, and eventually you'll hit critical mass where it is time for you to become an independent being here. This is the process. So we're expanding the form as we go. Just like when we go and make the transition and we activate strands 4, 5, and 6 to make our shift to density 2, our bodies are 7 to 12 feet tall there. Right? Under a microscope, they have lots more chromosomes. Humans are supposed to have 144 chromosomes. We have like 46 that they've identified, and I think monkeys have 48. Crayfish have like 100 and something. There's some ridiculous chromosome numbers happening here. All right? So all of the things, as far as the accretion process, this is the accretion process. Growth is the accretion process. You're pulling in frequency and making it yours. Now, expanding back into godhood means you're absorbing the universe until it's all inside of you again. That's really what it is.
It's like a blob.
Yeah, but it's a happy blob, and it's done with love, right? So you're part of the unified field when you're in it. It's hard to describe because we're stuck in a linear thing of time, but all of this is a breathing rhythm of consciousness simply sitting in one place, expanding and flashing on. And even expansion is a tricky term because expansion implies movement, right? This way, going from where your space is to a bigger space. We're not even doing that. We're sitting in the universe, in the mind of God, as scalar wave units that stand still as far as they don't move from here to here, they don't dance, they just turn on and off. They go from vibration to oscillation. And through that process, the whole hologram of being able to see yourself out here in a separate body, in individuation, in externalization, is turned on. Well, really, we're all just in the theater. We're little lights that are sitting in the theater and going to sleep and waking up and going to sleep and waking up. That is the nature of the hologram. And it is so strange when the mental body starts to try to wrangle with that. It's like going into the bull ring and trying to get that bull by the horns and take it down so you're going to win, right? And the thing is charging at you. Where do I go? Where do I go? Dodge the bull for a while until you can figure out what angle to grab the horns. And you don't want to hurt the bull. You just want to grab the horns and very gently say, "Can we be friends, please?" The bull is the illusion coming at you. Because at this point, we're not dealing with all of our facilities. We used to be fully aware. We're supposed to be aware of our body consciousness. We're supposed to be aware of, I wouldn't say I would say of ourselves as our body consciousness, of ourselves as our elemental consciousness. This was all who we were. If you identified who we are, it wasn't just the person you see in the mirror when you look at the hologram. You knew yourself as your molecules, you knew yourself as your elements, your water elements, you knew yourself as the 3D elements here, you knew yourself as the whole hologram. And you got a kick out of it. Because it's like a bunch of us literally sitting, manifesting a hologram together, while we're all just sitting back in the theater, And there's the stage up there. So we're going to project our beams up. Okay, guys, 1, 2, 3, all at once. Here we go, it's on, right? That is really what the consciousness is doing behind the hologram. But unfortunately, part of it's getting stuck in the hologram. Where it gets stuck in the hologram, it doesn't know how to shut back off. It's getting stuck in oscillation instead of being able to return to vibration so it can continue its natural process. This is because the templates are damaged where they're supposed to do that very neatly sequenced project out, draw back, project out, draw back. They're supposed to do that. There's twists in the template that create polarization where project out, draw back, hold it there, hold it there, hold it there, draw back. It's like, it throws the rhythm off. It's like a square dance where people are tripping over each other. That's what happened. That's what's going on in our DNA templates. The remedy to that is working with Merkaba, because our templates, those little scalar waves, those little tiny billions and billions of scalar waves that turn on and off, are Merkaba fields. We have them here and we have them in our doubles, because we do have an antiparticle double self, and when you put the two together, you have your inner Earth self. All right, so if you want to get to inner Earth, you have to go find your other half and bring it together. You have half of the Merkaba vehicle. If you look at a Merkaba vehicle in symbolic terms as two triangles, one pointed up, one pointed down, you have one half, and the other part of you that's in the antiparticle universe has the other half. When you bring those two triangles together, the one up one and the one down one, you form a Merkaba field, which is a counter-rotating spiral of electromagnetic energy that literally controls angular rotation of particle spin when the flash-on happens. The process of getting free is bringing together the portions of your identity. But right now, we have a heck of a job before us, because in our hologram, we have been repeatedly manifesting distortion patterns from what would be the past. The past is what was in your strands 1, 2, and 3. If you're in strand 4, now, if you're in fourth dimensional consciousness, which we all are moving into at this point, we have fourth DNA strand activation. We're seeing the 3D as our, one dimension below, is the hologram that we're seeing physically. But if we have not transmuted all of the things from strand 1 and from strand 2, the dimension 1 experience that we move through to get there, the dimension 2 experience, it is actually coming in as a backdrop that's below. It won't be pictures in your hologram. It will be undercurrents of energy that are dragging your energy around in the hologram. That's what's happening. So we have a subconscious to clear by healing our strands 1, 2, and 3, and by using the outside Merkaba field, and by using the Maharada D12 current, which has the ability to reset the natural pattern for any frequency it intersects below itself. It's the strongest, besides the primal light fields, it is the strongest. The Maharada D12 current has the divine blueprint of the entire dimensional scale in it. So if you have at dimension 2 in your second strand template distortions that are there that are creating this undercurrent in your hologram, if you run the Maharada current on a regular basis, it will clear them. It will do that on each level. This is why we use the Kathara healing system. It was made for that. It's a healing system to get the Maharada D12 current activated in the body so the body can begin to heal, so the hologram can begin to heal. There's the old saying, healers heal thyself. There's a lot of people, it's kind of funny, a little thing about healing. If you have the urge that you want to heal other people, you're telling yourself something. Okay? Like me, I'm not really a healer, I'm an informer. I'm telling myself something. What I'm telling myself is that I need to inform myself. If you have that real, just really want to help people, really want to heal people kind of thing, the people that you will draw to you are responding to those distortion patterns that are in your lower strands. You will manufacture in your hologram clients that have the parts of you need to fix, the parts of you that are jammed up. And the problems they have are exactly what the pattern is. You can tell what you need to heal by who comes to you for what. Because each one of them is showing you something in your pattern. And it goes the same for them. What you are to them. Now remember, they're doing a hologram too, right? You are the part of themselves that knows how to fix it. Okay? So, we each have the healer and what needs to be healed inside of ourselves. When you put it in the hologram, there's nothing that happens by chance. That is absolute truth. It's not chance. It's manufacture. That doesn't mean it means that you intended to manufacture something. There are happy accidents and sometimes not quite happy accidents where energy patterns get combined in a certain way and they don't come out to be what they were intended to be. But nothing can come into your life that is not in your template. So if there are things coming into your life that you don't like Anunnaki and spaceships that want to take over the planet, that means there's something in your template that would put you in a hologram that would have that problem. This is where we get into our race and species karmic imprint, our template imprint, where the relationship with the Anunnaki and Draconian races is part of the natural history that is the template for this race. And it will affect all of us, and it is affecting all of us, whether or not we want to acknowledge it. If we choose instead, if the real issue is, in our templates, we have this conflict that needed healing between us and these other two races, but if we decide to believe something else instead, what we do is we create a hologram, a thought form, and make an overlay over the reality. So not only are you not being able to see what the reality was, you're not being able to access it, to heal it, because you have an overlay that's twisting stuff even more. The Anunnaki have tried to do this. The thoughts that they are seeding here and that they are getting channels to activate here now, so it will consummate soon and come out so they can come, they are intentionally creating overlays on our templates because they need us to run Anunnaki coding into the planetary Templar so they have the ability with their biology to interact directly with Earth. They can interact with Nibiru, but they don't have the coding of Earth's template. They are trying to hijack our planet by hijacking us, and once they get the planet, we're not useful to them. This is an old conflict. We all carry it, which will bring to us certain experiences. Now, what people are starting to live now is they're starting to walk the Atlantean karma. Okay, we're in a mass time period where the stuff that was put in our templates through our experience in the Atlantean time vectors is now activating and coming back into our hologram. The Atlantean karma stuff was stored in, we call it karma, but it's really the Atlantean pattern, which goes with the part of your consciousness that's manifest in the time periods that we would call the Atlantean period, which ran from about 50,000 BC to 9,558 BC. There was a certain point in time. Now they were dormant in our template, right? The memory of them were dormant in our template. Because if you don't clear everything the first time you run through it, you go back to number one, which means you go back to another fetal body, you incarnate into it, you climb up the scale, if you can transmute it, you get out. You get healed, you take the body with you and leave. We're seeing the Atlantean karma manifest right now on a mass level because it's been in our templates and we've been cycling with it for a very long time. We have not cleared it, so it is coming up. When I've done healing work recently, in the last 2 years, they started to really come through. There are these bizarre configurations that you can see with the D4 vision. They look like shackles and chains. They look like they're made out of etheric metal, like iron, things around people's necks, like chastity belts, horrible things sticking in chakras, and people are getting, and they affect you physically. You get physical manifestations there. The Atlantean karma is starting to literally manifest in the hologram. It starts with the body. See, first, before something comes out here, its first stage, when it first activates, it goes here, in you, inside you. Then it progressively moves away from where your consciousness is. There's your body. It moves out from you. Okay? So the first stage of the Atlantean karma isn't seeing it here, where there's going to be Anunnaki on the planet and spaceships flying in the sky. First, it's having contact with things that aren't physical yet in our experience, which the channels are doing, and which the people who experience abductions are doing. Progressively, that builds up. The Atlantean karmic imprint comes up more. It's going to move from inside of us, where we start to get the blockages, where females start to have problems with the organs down here because there were horrible things done to females in those days because they were trying to control the breeding. Where males have equally horrible experiences, and indigos have probably very sad ones because we were hunted in Atlantis. We were the Magi Grail lines there. We carried the sacred information, and we were the ones responsible for the Templar in a period of time where we were attacked. And we were all pushed up to a place called Lohas Atlantis. We were all holed up there. It was the only safe ground left because they literally took over the entire Atlantean continent. Lohas Atlantis is the areas now called Ireland and England. Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales. That was the upper tip of the Atlantean continent. And we were all holed up there for a long time. And then we got invaded there. The Ice Age that made Ireland all under ice and all that area under ice was done on purpose. It was done to force us out. And we had to go down. We ended up in the areas of Italy. It was called Ionia. And in Ionia, then they came in and the Dracs took over there. So the Indigos, as their Atlantean karma comes up, this is why they're finding weird experiences happening. They're having, UFOs. They didn't even believe in UFOs, but all of a sudden they're having abduction experiences, like somebody's chasing them, somebody's after them. Somebody is after them. Because the Atlantean karma is coming back up. It's manufacturing the hologram again. The same people are back for another redo of the game. The same ones that were doing whatever to you last time are still here with you. Now, they're coming back into your hologram. There's one little twist that really irks me. Some religious systems are teaching this when they deal with karma, that, if you have bad karma now, because you were bad in the other time, and now you're experiencing the other shoe. 90% of the time that is not true. 90% of the time you're repeating the same pattern. If you're the victim this time, it's because you were for the last 20 times. Okay? Now, there's always a relationship between the victim-victimizer role. There's something you're doing to draw victimizers to you. So you're still responsible for the hologram. But there's a twist that's being taught in the karmic things that are telling you that you deserve to be treated bad because obviously you were horrible to somebody in another life. Well, you're supposed to accept the fact that this is okay and I'm just going to have a lousy life and hopefully that'll be enough to pay for it. That's not what's happening. When the Atlantean karma is stored in strand 3 because of its placement in the planetary time cycles. That is where that imprint would be stored. We would have our Lemurian karma stored in strand 2. That would be, and that's what's coming up through the emotional body. Because of the time periods when those races were seeded here, they correspond to certain vibration points in our strands. So when you go into emotional body clearing, you're starting to clear the templates of yourself that's in those time periods in Lemuria, strand 2, and Atlantis, strand 3. Now, why are we seeing Atlantean karma? Because we're all going into strand 4 activation. Now, before activation, initiation happens first. It starts to vibrate. Strand 4 is starting to vibrate now. Okay, it's not ready to project its hologram out quite yet. What we've been seeing as solid as our hologram is what was contained in strand 3. We initiated our strand 3. Strand 3 has been activating, so we have been beginning to see the earlier parts of strand 3 karma as solid. As our strand 4 activates or begins its initiation process, we will progressively see the upper bands of our D3 strand imprint as the hologram. That's what's activating and consummating. As strand 4 initiates, you will have the activation and consummation cycle on the one below it happening. That's why you will see you'll see manifest what is one dimension below your station of consciousness. If your consciousness is beginning the initiation into dimension 4, you will be seeing the fulfillment cycle of the strand 3 content. And that's where the Atlantean karma is. We're getting ready to see the grand hurrah at the end period of the Atlantean karma, which was a takeover that changed the course of what history was supposed to be here. So right now it's inside. People are starting to get implants coming up where you look at their field. Healers are really busy these days because there's all sorts of stuff popping up in people's fields when you start to do like the outer body. There's certain types of healing that involve being able to see implants in the fields and removing them. They're coming up all the time now. The planet itself is moving through. It's a repeat of what was stored in its third grid. Okay, the planet has what are equivalent to DNA strands. All right, they're not DNA strands. They're energy template strands. Planet is purging the rest of what's in its third strand, and the grand hurrah in its third strand is the Atlantean issue, which brings the Anunnaki races back, and it brings the Zeta races back, and it brings them all back. So.
Portions of the biology that we went through is also being experienced on the planet.
Yeah.
All the chemical and DNA cloning manipulations and now the genetically modified food.
Yep.
All reconnecting to the Atlantean manipulation of genetics.
Very much. And what they did, one of the things they did in the Atlantean manipulation of genetics was they knew that the stuff that people have to eat progressively alters their template. There are foods that would sustain your ability to hold higher strand activation, that would sustain the integrity of your template. And then there were foods that would definitely take it down and literally mutate your template. There were foods created and other foods destroyed during the Atlantean periods where there were weather control devices that were used to create droughts and to create certain non-organic conditions where groups of people, guess who? The Indigos, because they were after us because we could stop them if we were able to mobilize, where they would create conditions where no food was available except what the Atlantean civilizations had to offer, which was altered in a way that it held the imprint. They brought plants here, they brought animals here from Nibiru. They have the Nibiruan imprint in them. This place has been seeded within life forms that were not organic here. Some of them are organic, but others were seeded here to make a critical mass first in the Earth's template of the Nibiru and Anunnaki template. It was, we had our memory wiped out, and then we had a few ice ages thrown down on our heads. Basically, the last one that I think pulled out by 15,000 BC, it started to recede or something like that. The one down in that period, which was earlier, that had to do with earlier Atlantean messes, we were put into a situation where there was nothing left except to consume the things that were around us. Right now, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between an Anunnaki plant, a draconian plant, or an organically human or Christos plant. It's not just human plant, but it's Christos. We're dealing with Christos versus non-Christos patterns, and they go not just in human life, just in human DNA. Everything on the planet fits into one of those categories. It doesn't mean it's bad. All right? It means that there are distortions in its template that do not allow it to hold higher frequency, and therefore it is on a cycle that will lead to its own implosion and turn back to space dust instead of lead to its own ascension and fulfillment of becoming one and conscious with Source. Right now, most of our foodstuffs are Anunnaki or Draconian. We keep putting their templates into our bodies. They're becoming a part of us that way. This started in Atlantis, and it has been progressively proceeding. Now, with the genetically engineered foods, it's not only that on the organic level that's being put back. There are forms of energy, radiation that have to do with the radiated foods. There are forms of combining genetic elements that are not meant to be done. What they're trying to do is get us to a point of a common foodstuff, which is a fully manufactured foodstuff, where first of all, it is known that as we proceed through these things, they're aiming for Phantom Earth. If they can't have this one, they're going to try to take as much of the population with them as they can. They know that foodstuff is going to be very hard to come by after certain things take place in the Phantom Earth time vector. So they're trying to create what will be an easily, a nutrient pill kind of thing that at least will keep people alive. The only reason they want certain people alive is to run the Templar for them as slaves. They need our coding, and they want to be the dominators. We're in the middle of an amazing mess, and if it wasn't for the fact that we have power, and our power is love and healing, it could be something to get really upset about. But it's not worth getting really upset about. First of all, that will attach you to its negative outcome, which you don't need to see. But realizing the degree to which this hologram has been a part of the hologram that has to do with these other races, it's pretty amazing. Right down to the plants that are on our body. It's kind of interesting. It opens up a whole new thing of, wow, I wonder if that's a Christos tree or if it's not a Christos tree. Is it Draconian? Is it Anunnaki? There's a whole bunch of other races too that carry, versions of the coding. When you start to realize you will have some plants, some animals, and some chemicals and some molecules of things that resonate much better with you, and other things that will make you sick. I have an allergy to fur, which is bizarre. I love fuzzy kitties and things like that, but all through my childhood I had an allergy. Allergies are telling you something. There's something in your template that's not compatible with the template in the other thing. Now you can harmonize that sometimes. You can put a chemical in between and pretend it's harmonizing it sometimes, but you're not fixing the problem, which is two energy fields are competing with each other and they're creating backflow into your field. So when we get back into the hologram, I want to talk to you about go back to myons, dions, and trions, because these are important. If we can get the fact that we are projecting this hologram out through the initiation, activation, and consummation of DNA strands, is that simple. As one initiates, it starts to vibrate, releases a sound tone. That sound tone connects with, in the unified field, more sound tones that are like it, builds up a charge enough to where it can flash on and turn into a light form. So it goes from sound to light. It goes from miasmic state to diasmic state. That's when it's activating. That's when you're walking your hologram. That's what it means by walking your karma. Karma is not just from back then, It's continually created now. So if we can realize the initiation, activation, consummation of DNA strands is the process by which you manufacture a hologram, then you get into, well, what exactly is it doing? How does it get to be that physical stuff that we see out there and the scientists can rip apart under microscopes and identify and label? How does it go from that stage? It has to do with ionic particulates. When we hit the stage of initiation in the activation of in the activation of the hologram, when you first have your consciousness hitting a part of your dimensionalized template, say one piece of your D1 template, your consciousness beam coming in from source makes it start to sing. When it hits a critical mass by drawing more from the unified field of like vibration, where a little choir starts, when it hits that critical mass, there's a stage where it goes from being a vibration and transitions into being an oscillation, where it goes from being sound to being light. There is the first manifest. The thing that's between manifestation and demanifestation as far as the hologram are the ionic particulates. They have the ability to change polarity by what's around them. They can change their charge. Particles can change shape and change affiliation because they are more mutable particles. They are micro subparticles, subatomic particles. Certain ones of these have been identified, but science doesn't know. Their traces have been identified. That something was there, we can tell because it affected other things, but you couldn't see the thing that affected it, that kind of thing. But they can see the things that come out of them. What you have at that transition point where you go from vibration, stop, into oscillation. It's like when you do your Merkaba spins. You go from your magnetic, get it to a certain point, then stop it, then you reverse it and go the other way, and you do your electrical. Well, that's what's happening, where you have your vibration, hits a critical mass, then you stop it, holds there, and then it reverses spin. When that reversal happens, there is the first little light sound wave that is created. Literally, it goes from being internal vibration to external flash on. That is a myon, a dion, or a trion unit, an ionic particulate particle. Now, this chart is interesting because it shows you, it's hard to read this one because this was pulled on the printer that doesn't print too good on Mylars, but I'll read it to you. We started with this yesterday. We had part of chi, part of k, and part of cum. Now remember, they're the template stuff, right? Okay, the points where the templates make their transition into the stuff that external is made of is through the trions, dions, and myons. The part of cum particles, the part of cum scalar templates create myons. The part of K, which are the ones that are affiliated with they have both positive and negative electrical affiliation and their own, so they're like they have a tri-charge. They're the ones that form antiparticles. They're the ones that have the unity rather than the polarity. They have the polarity held within unity. They're the ones we want to aim for. That's where you get the best experience when you're in your hologram. And then you have over here part of chi units that are the I meant part of chi units over here. It's this one over here. The part of chi units that are the tri-phase ones. They hold the unity and they hold the polarity all in one. They form trions. Okay, that's this line over here. Then part of K form dions. They're the electrical ones. These are the ones that, now dions have a positive electrical affiliation where myons have a negative. So you have a negative electrical field and a positive electrical field. This is what literally the hologram is built upon. Okay, we call the ones that are built on dions base electrical, and the ones built on myons are base magnetic. Now, what myons do is they draw energy. They bring energy back. They're the particles that would take your hologram out of manifestation into vibration. Then you have over here the dions, the base electrical. These are the ones that move it into manifestation. They work together. And we're constantly in the process of our templates, and our DNA templates are taking, we start as myon consciousness on this side because we're actually, our consciousness here, because of its vibration when it came in, is considered myon consciousness. So we come in to the myon unified field. We come in as the myon unified field, holding a particular template. And then once we integrate, we have our consciousness that comes in, takes the myons, becomes the myons. It projects portions of ourselves into, say, dimension 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frequency, when there's enough of our consciousness in, that's when that vibration starts to happen, and that's when it goes into the process of beginning to initiate. And that's when it goes into the process of it hitting a critical mass of vibration, where our consciousness then switches into becoming particles. It switches on from myons, remember the vibration, to dyons. So we literally think in dyons when we think a thought. When our thoughts get projected, we're seeing a dyon field. All right, we started out as these guys, the magnetic ones. They built up to a certain point, and then the transition, they reversed polarity, and they became dyons, which are base electrical transmitting particles, and they are the ones that literally transmit what's in our template out, or what appears to be out. We're actually just looking at that field of them, but because the way our perceptions are arranged, because the way our templates are arranged, they appear as a three-dimensional hologram. So we go from myons to dyons and back again. These are always switching places from each moment to moment. We go from myon into dyon, back to myon, back to dyon, and there's a series of them going. We have one myon goes out. Okay, you go from vibration to oscillation, and then as this oscillation reaches its critical point, this is starting to initiate here. The next vibration is starting to initiate. So as this one starts to go out, this one starts to come on. So it's very balanced. This is why balance is very important in one's life, because when you get out of balance, these things start to get out of balance too. Your natural core creation processes, and that's when your life can take on really wacky characteristics in your hologram. Like when people do really Kundalini activations without understanding how to really use the higher energy systems to stabilize what you're running, they can create absolute messes in their bodies. They can get sick and have terrible experiences, but it goes from the body into the hologram. Sometimes people, when they're clearing karma, the old-fashioned way, they used to say, be careful what you ask for because you might get it. When you ask for I want my karmic healing accelerated, you may find your hologram just takes on a life of its own, and you lose your car, your job, your family, and end up in a flood, and then you go someplace else to get away from it and end up in an earthquake. It's as if your hologram's just trying to do you in. You know what I mean? Now, what we're experiencing really is consciousness is sitting still and experiencing itself flashing on and off into pictures. But portions of ourselves are the flashing on and off little units that are us. We're the portions of the bigger consciousness. They're taking the form of scalar waves. They're flashing on to be the hologram. We have our own sentience. Okay? We're creator and created all at the same time. So we know this here as in a different way than the part of us that's just in vibration. We're part of it. We're in it, but not of it. That's what I mean by that. There's a part of us that is always not in the manifestation, but there's a part of us that's in it. Now, if you're going to bring those parts together to heal, you have to acknowledge both parts. You can't just say, I will be not of it at all. You will try to be vibration. You'll hold all your energy in and not let it flow. That's why you need to actively engage and be fully engaged in your hologram. You're here, you're going to think, you're going to feel, you're going to experience, because that's the nature of the hologram. And it's through allowing that to move through you and not get stuck that you'll be able to combine it with the other part of you that's not in the hologram. So there's a surrender that's involved. There's a trust that's involved in the part of you that is in vibration, which means it is still actually in the primal sound fields. It's the part of you that's closest to your wholeness with Source when you go into the vibration stage. And they call it the divine feminine, interestingly, because it's the negative stage. It's the stage and women's bodies are actually built more on that principle. Males' bodies are built more on the other, which means male bodies have a bit more in their templates of the dyons, and females have a bit more of the myons in the template. So there's this whole thing that we're in the middle of an illusion, and it's amazing when you start to see the things we take for granted, like being and having bodies and that kind of stuff, how that's really manufactured. There is a process. It's like a processing plant, and we're the processing plant, and we're the ones making the choices. There are going to be more dispensations of information given in the next probably 3 or 4 months that have to do with some really interesting ways to take that knowledge and that power and begin to work with parts of our programming, parts of the propaganda that we've accepted as our templates that keeps us so we'll never see a Stargate open. First of all, we've been programmed to believe they don't exist. We've been programmed to be terrified if we do start to believe that things like that exist, because everybody else will think you're crazy. But the psychologists tell you you're nuts. We've been programmed that if we start to hear voices, we better run for the doctor or hide, either one, because that means we're psychotic or kooky. We've been fed labels on what things mean here, and if we continue to believe those things, we're going to block our ability to have what we're trying to experience, which is the ability to move through into higher dimensional space. So there are things that we'll learn how to do with this, but this is the beginning of learning what it is we're doing by being here, how we're flashing off and on. We'll learn to catch. In fact, we'll try to do it a little later, probably after lunch. I would like to do this, and if I could forget, remind me, because this can be really neat. There's a way where you can start to find and I don't know if we can do it in the daytime, though. That's my concern. Yeah, we'll do this tonight. Okay, once it's darker outside. I don't know what time it gets dark here, but it will be better in low light. We can start to see where you disappear. We can start to see it easier with each other. All right? We were taught a long time ago. I forgot this exercise. A long time ago, when some of this was being explained to me before I knew about myons and dions, I did know I was taught that we flash off and on, and I knew that, but I couldn't figure out what it meant. But I got an experience of being able to see it. Well, if you take two people and they look into each other's eyes for a while, and just look into each other's eyes for a while, to the point where and you keep the focus. First of all, you start to get your eyes will get sore, because you're picking up more frequency you're transmitting frequency between your eyes to each other. If you can get past the point where you need to blink, because you break it again, and you lose your focus, what you're trying to do is learn to hold enough frequency where your eyes can even deal with enough frequency, where you can begin to see where the hologram begins to go away, the point where the next moment would start to come through, to see between the moment points. And it starts out as really strange. You won't just see everything flash off all of a sudden. That comes later, and you can get to the point where that happens. What you're doing is changing the speed of your consciousness. You're making your consciousness vibrate differently in order to be able to catch the moments. You're actually slowing it down. You're slowing the brain waves down to do it. And you're doing it by amplifying the energy that's coming through, that's affecting the pineal gland. The pineal is not as dormant as they think it is. So when you do this, you'll start to see parts of the person. First you'll feel like your eyes are playing tricks on you, and you'll want to close them, they'll start to burn a little bit and maybe tear. If you can get past that point, you'll start to see like areas. You'll be looking here, but you'll notice here in your vision space just makes a black hole and disappears a little bit. Or you may see like this part of the person's face just blank out, and you kind of want to rub your eyes, say, what happened? My eyes are doing something funny. It's not your eyes doing something funny. It's your eyes doing something that they're not used to doing too often, which is going at a speed. The vision, the perceptual facilities that your eyes are connected to are going at a speed where they're beginning to see the flash-off points, where the position, where what is on in the matter base is turning off and going into vibration. And it'll be replaced immediately. So you have to catch it, because right as one is going off, the other's coming on. But there's a little angle right in between that you can start to see this. And it's kind of cool, because after a while you can really sit there and do it. And I remember doing this with somebody, and we're sitting there crying at each other, like the eyes are burning, we're going to keep them open, we're going to keep them open. And once in a while, if you get enough of the focus going, you can blink them, to clear them, but then get right back into the focus. And we were watching each other disappear. Then the face flashing started to happen. That's exciting. The face flashing, where you start to see who your other faces are that are in the other time vectors. You will see theirs and they will see yours, which is cool. You'll see the face will flash off for a second, go black, and then real quick a lighter version, it won't be as dense as the face you're looking at here, will come through and be and then it'll flash off and the other person will come back again. You can start to see between the pulses of the moments here, and that's when you start to go trans time. You're going transharmonic time perception. So we'll play that. Remind me if I forget, if I get on other stuff, that this evening, hopefully it'll be a little bit darker out. We'll try to do this. It's easier to do it in low light because you don't have the distracting light field around you. But it's kind of fun. You can also do it in a mirror. Okay? Yeah, where it's just you and yourself and I that you're going to deal with, right? Yeah. However, you can also get yourself in trouble doing it in a mirror, because mirrors work because they bend light in a certain way in the hologram. They're a certain pattern in the hologram. They work as doorways. They're a pattern of energy that looks like a mirror out here, but they're a combination of different substances that we see as the mirror, are actually certain energy patterns that create interdimensional doorways. So things can come through mirrors with you when you start to open the ability to perceive through them. So you always seal your mirrors first before you play with them, and you always run a Maharic seal, the D12 frequency, before you even attempt this, because if you could really, really draw in all sorts of things. You could have legions of things you don't even know exist come through, right? And remember, if they do come through, that implies that they're in your template someplace in the subconscious. It's a good way to let loose and find out what's in your subconscious, because you may see fleets of little flying demons go flying out of your mirror into your room. It means you have this in your template. You and a whole bunch of other people who know that these guys exist, but your conscious mind didn't know. Your first remembering was having them fly out of your mirror. You don't really want them to fly out of your mirror, so use the D12 frequency to seal it. Running the temporary Maharic seal will help to stop those things. And meanwhile, you can start looking into your own eyes, and you'll start to, at first it's like you get bored looking at your own eyes, and your focus changes a little then, and it kind of pulls in and bends itself in a way, and there's a certain way you can look into your own pupils, and you feel it out, because it's a little different angle for everybody. You start to feel something behind your eyes. You're actually feeling back here, but it feels like you're going this way to feel it. You're going into the hologram. That can begin a process of self-knowing that's really useful. Now, what time, Michael, what time are we supposed to break for lunch so I know what to get into? Okay. Does that mean that I should not go into the next section, or? Are we ready in the next 5 minutes? Okay, well, I'll finish this then, and I won't launch into the next one. It's going to take probably half hour, 45 minutes. Okay. When we get into realizing that this is our projection, this is where it got fun. This is the new material that they were giving me. Where, okay, we have myons, dions, and trions. I can understand that. We have the Parkai units and the things they build up to form templates, and then the crossover point between templates and matter are these things, the ionic particulates. What do they make in the hologram? You know, they make the subatomic and microsubatomic particles. If we come down and look at the dions, the electrical charge ones, they would be considered, and it's misleading to say it, to take this too seriously, but you could look at them as the male and the female, the divine masculine, divine feminine particles, okay, because one's electrical. Male would be electrical, female would be magnetic. And yeah, that's kind of how you look at it. And that's the divine Son, divine child, the Christos, that's created by putting the two of them together, and it becomes more than the sum of its parts, that kind of thing. But when we come down into particle reality, we have nions, what they're associated here. The primary microsubatomic units, or not quite yet particles, that are projected into the hologram by partikai, by dions, the electrical ones, are negative charge units. They project their opposite. So if you have a dion, a unit, which is really a light sound unit, a micro light sound unit, and it has a positive charge, it will project negative charge, electrical charged particle things out in here. Now, they would be things like electrons, and the protons that doesn't go here. There would be antiprotons. I can't even read it. Electrons and antiprotons, which have negative charges. These are particles now. The science has identified and labeled. All right, they create electrons, antiprotons, hadrons. These are not all negative either. Some of these have properties that they could actually sometimes. You'll see the same word in all three places, the same type of particle, which means there's different types of them formed by different, myons, dions, or trions. But these are primarily associated with, dions are primarily associated with electrons and antiprotons, with hadrons, with things called mesons, and they're a form of boson. These are all subatomic particles. And I'm like looking through the dictionary saying, how do you spell that, guys? Okay. To find out, what are these? I'd never even heard of them before. Quarks, baryons, if I can pronounce that, I have to look on this way because it's too hard. Okay, fermions and weakons. Okay, these are associated with nions. Over here, myons, the negative ones, the negative crossover particulates, create positive charge units, which would be protons. Gluons are primarily formed by these. They're not necessarily, science doesn't necessarily identify some of these as positively charged. They don't know what their base is. They don't even know that what a base electrical or base magnetic template means, or particle. Because I've had that discussion with physicists. Well, what do you mean, base magnetic? Base electrical. we were talking about the myons, dions, and trions. It's either a drawing force or a transmitting force. I didn't realize they didn't know that much about particle interaction yet. So it was like, I don't even know how to describe it to them. Now I do. This is the point that is showing you what types of particles are manifesting from these types of ionic particulates. Okay, we have gravitons, gluons, gravitons, neutrons, and their dormant phase. Now neutrons do things. They have their dormant phase and their active phase, which means they change. Okay? Their structure goes from, remember, myons, dions, and trions, flash on becomes one thing, flash off becomes something else, combine it with its opposite, and it becomes a third. So literally, the particles that these form are not as stable particles as they think they are. They transition, they disappear from here, become something else someplace else in one of the other fields, then come back again as something else here. All right? So it's really, there's a dance going on with subatomic particles that the scientists have no idea. They know some of it's happening. They've theorized that some parts of it might be occurring. They have no idea the degree to which it's occurring continually. So there's a lot of new exciting things for scientists to find out. All right? So this goes into, still on the myon side, bosons, positrons, and a whole bunch of other things. These are just some of them. And then over here, these are the fun ones. This is the stuff that gets you to inner Earth, okay? Because that is a trion reality projection field. You have photons, leptons, muons, they call them Tau, I believe, gag bosons, pheromones, weakons, and neutrons in their active state. Neutrons and protons do a little dance when you start to do atomic transmutation by combining with your antiparticle double. The neutrons become active, and they turn into protons, and everything gets sucked into the nucleus of the cells. All the electrons reverse polarity get sucked into the nucleus of the cells, and you have major proton activity happening in the nucleus of cells. The neutrons become protons, and then the shift, their angular rotation of particle spin, shifts to match that of their antiparticle units. They're in your antiparticle double's body. They come together and in fusion, in internal fusion, and literally turn into trions, which makes them disappear out of polarity, and they come back down as an expression at the next octave up. So this is the transmutation process on the nuclear level. This is what your bodies will go through. And there's a lot more that's being given on that. There's a whole section of information that's going to be in the new book that I'm hoping to have out by November or December that is the Forbidden Testaments of Revelation. There's a whole series of, they've explained exactly what happens in the DNA to make these changes happen. There's a production of a chemical called celestylene that occurs within the hydrogen bonds that hold the DNA chains together. The hydrogen bonds activate by something called turnstile DNA sequences. Turnstile DNA sequences are sequences that are turned off right now that would appear in the hydrogen bonds and fill out the DNA. Now I talk about hydrogen bonds. People who know about DNA know what that means, but people who know might not. When we talk about chemical DNA basically has chemicals lined up that form the ladder rungs, and then it has these little what do you call those things? The side rails of the ladder, because it's like a ladder-shaped chemical unit. All right, you have the ladder handrails and the ladder rungs. The ladder rungs it was like a ladder that was cut in half, and you have sugar and phosphate molecules that make up the handrails. And there's a little thingy that sticks out that's called a nucleotide base, which is a combination of one of 4 different chemicals, plus I believe sugar and phosphates are in with that too. So you have these half-ladders sticking out here, and you have another one that I believe one comes from the male and one comes from the mother, one comes from the father line gene code. They actually were that divided once. They're not now because they're all scrambled. Once upon a time, one side of the ladder would be the imprint from the mother gene line, one would be from the father gene line. They come together by the chemicals in the nucleotide bases that are drawn to each other. There's only 2, I'm not going to get into them. There's adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. And they line up with each other. They draw to each other and link. And what they link with is called a hydrogen bond, hydrogen atoms. They're very weak. All right, there's a very weak link that holds the DNA ladder together. It's in that hydrogen bond that changes happen. There are changes happening because when the template for the DNA, for each DNA strand, changes. There are things that activate in the hydrogen bonds that aren't there right now. They're called turnstile DNA sequences. They turn on and they shift rotational particle spin on the molecules and atoms that make up the rest of the DNA chain. They create a chemical that's secreted in the body and the blood, is secreted in the body through the DNA, goes through its natural processes of getting distributed into the body so it can get into the bloodstream, changes the hormone content, activates the pineal and the thyroid and thymus complexes, and it prepares the body chemically for its transition of shift and angular rotation of particle spin. At this point, the body starts to take on, like you can see color flickering through its auric field temporarily, very quickly, and you will then get a red glow. There will be like a magenta crimson cast that comes around the skin right before it's ready to transmute. And that's because it's entering a frequency spectrum of going down into the D1 particles combined with the D15 particles, which will give you go into antimatter, and then you pop up someplace else. And it leaves a little bit of dust, the stuff in the atoms that was not able to make the transition, the stuff that couldn't pull into the nucleus of cells, that stuff that stayed outside of the nucleus of the cells ends up literally getting burned off, and it ends up kind of like a silica carbon type of very fine powder dust that gets kind of left. And there's also, mixed with that powder, trace elements of a new element that they don't know exists yet called celestylene, which has a very short, I think they call it half-life. It decays very quickly. So you can get, in certain conditions it won't, but on exposure to oxygen it does. So there's this whole process that your body goes through because your ions and dions are turning into trions, which is turning your particles and antiparticles into antiparticles, which is shifting your angular rotation of particle spin to get you into another space-time vector of a different frequency. So there's a whole biological process involved, and it's exciting to have this information here. It's been a very long time since this information was allowed here. And when we work with Merkaba, I mean, it's like huge amounts of information. Wow, where do we start? You start with Merkaba. It's that simple. The spiraling, counter-rotating fields of